Alaska is closer to Russia than it is to Florida. It owns 3 directional records at once, and it contains an entire Germany worth of land that nobody has ever explored. Welcome to the most insane state in America. These 50 facts will prove that Alaska is the most mind-bending place in America. These 50 geographic secrets get more insane with every single one. Coming in at number 50, here is something that will mess with your head. If you took Alaska and split it right down the middle, each half would still be bigger than Texas. That means Texas, the state that never stops bragging about its size, would suddenly become the 3rd largest state in America. Alaska is not just big, it is incomprehensibly massive in ways most people cannot even imagine. At number 49, we have a geographic phenomenon that defies basic logic. The Aleutian Islands stretch so far west that they actually cross the 180-degree meridian, the line that separates east from west on our planet. This creates an impossible situation. Alaska is simultaneously the westernmost state, the easternmost state, and the northernmost state in America. It is the only place on Earth that occupies 3 extreme positions at once, breaking the very concept of direction. Number 48 will change how you think about the world's tallest mountains. Everyone knows Mount Everest is the highest peak on Earth. But here is what they do not tell you about Denali in Alaska. Denali rises 18,000 feet from its base to its summit. Everest only rises 13,000 feet from base to peak. That means climbing Denali is actually a more extreme vertical challenge than climbing the world's most famous mountain. Alaska quietly holds the real record. At number 47, we enter territory that sounds like science fiction. In 1964, the Good Friday earthquake hit Alaska with such devastating force that it literally moved the entire state. Not just buildings, not just mountains, the entire landmass. The earthquake shifted Alaska 30 feet closer to Russia in a single moment. Imagine standing in your backyard and suddenly being 30 feet closer to another country without moving a muscle. That is the raw power hiding beneath Alaska's frozen surface. Number 46 reveals just how much coastline we are talking about. Alaska has 33,904 miles of coastline. Now compare that to every other state in America combined. Maine, Florida, California, Hawaii, all of them together total just 12,383 miles. Alaska has nearly 3 times more coastline than the entire rest of the United States. If you started walking Alaska's coast, you would circle the Earth's equator and still have thousands of miles left to go. The scale is beyond comprehension. At number 45, something truly bizarre is happening right now as you listen to this. Alaska is literally drifting toward Russia at more than 2 inches every single year. This is not a metaphor. The landmass is physically moving. Scientists predict that in 70 million years, Alaska will reconnect to Asia and completely close the Bering Strait. The continents that split apart thousands of years ago are slowly coming back together, and we are living during the journey. Number 44 shows temperature extremes that should not exist in one place. The coldest temperature ever recorded in Alaska was negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit in Prospect Creek. The hottest was 100 degrees in Fort Yukon. That is a 180-degree difference between the coldest and hottest spots. You could experience temperatures colder than Mars and hotter than most summer days in Florida, all within the same state. Alaska contains entire climate zones that have no business existing together. At number 43, we find something that puts Switzerland to shame. The Bering Glacier in Alaska covers 2,250 square miles of frozen landscape. To put that in perspective, the entire country of Switzerland is only 2,000 square miles. Alaska has a single glacier that is larger than an entire European country. This frozen river of ice holds more fresh water than most nations will ever see, and it is just one of thousands covering the state. Number 42 reveals the true wilderness of Alaska. More than 80% of the state is completely unreachable by road. No highways, no trails, no paths, just pure untouched wilderness that civilization has never seen. Most of Alaska has never been touched by human development at all. There are vast regions where no person has ever set foot. Landscapes that remain exactly as they were thousands of years ago. It is the last true frontier. At number 41, we reach Barrow, now called Utqiagvik, where the sun plays by completely different rules. During winter, the sun sets in November and does not rise again for 67 straight days, 2 full months of total darkness. But summer is even more extreme. The sun rises in May and stays up for 82 consecutive days without setting once. Imagine trying to sleep when the sun never goes down for nearly 3 months. Time itself becomes meaningless in the Arctic. Number 40 shows Alaska's frozen dominance over the entire planet. Alaska has more active glaciers than the rest of the inhabited world combined. We are talking about over 100,000 glaciers, rivers of ice covering the landscape. While other places have a handful of glaciers as tourist attractions, Alaska has so many that most of them do not even have names. The state is essentially one giant ice fortress that refuses to melt. At number 39, distance becomes hilarious. Alaska is closer to Russia than it is to Florida. At the narrowest point of the Bering Strait, Alaska is only 2.4 miles from Russian territory. You could practically swim there. Meanwhile, traveling from Alaska to Florida means crossing the entire North American continent. The irony is perfect. Alaska is technically American territory, but it is sitting right next to Russia like a neighbor who moved to the wrong side of the fence. Number 38 might be the greatest real estate deal in human history. In 1867, the United States bought Alaska from Russia for just $7.2 million. That works out to 2 cents per acre. Today, Alaska contains over $1 trillion worth of natural resources. Oil, gold, minerals, fish, timber, the list goes on forever. America essentially won the lottery, and Russia sold the ticket for pocket change before realizing what they had. At number 37, Alaska dominates the mountain rankings in America. Out of the 20 highest peaks in the United States, 17 of them are located in Alaska. The state owns the podium completely. If you want to climb the tallest mountains in America, you have to go to Alaska. The lower 48 states combined can only contribute 3 peaks to the top 20 list. Alaska is where the real giants live. Number 36 puts Alaska's size into global perspective. If Alaska declared independence tomorrow and became its own country, it would instantly rank as the 33rd largest nation on Earth. Bigger than Iran, bigger than Mongolia, bigger than Peru. Alaska would sit comfortably in the middle of the world's countries, by size, towering over most of Europe and competing with major global powers. It is not just a state, it is a territory that could stand alone on the world stage. At number 35, we find another glacier that humiliates entire states. The Malospeeno Glacier is larger than Rhode Island. An entire U.S. state could fit inside a single frozen river in Alaska. Rhode Island has cities, highways, populations, and infrastructure. Meanwhile, Alaska has a chunk of ice bigger than all of that, and nobody even thinks about it because there are so many glaciers that one more barely registers. Number 34 reveals Alaska's aquatic insanity. Alaska contains over 3 million lakes. For comparison, Minnesota calls itself the land of 10,000 lakes. Add Wisconsin and Michigan to that, and you still do not come close to Alaska. Alaska has more lakes than Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan combined. The state is essentially floating on water, with countless bodies of water scattered across its wilderness. Most of these lakes do not even have names because there are simply too many. At number 33, we meet a volcano that refuses to calm down. Mount Pavlov is so active and dangerous that it has its own dedicated airline warning system. Pilots have to check its status before flying because it erupts roughly every 2 years. This is not ancient history. This is happening right now. Every couple of years, Pavlov explodes and sends ash clouds into flight paths, forcing airlines to reroute. Alaska has a volcano so temperamental it gets its own air traffic system. Number 32 takes us into truly mind-bending territory. The amount of ice that Alaska produces annually is so massive that you could build a wall of ice completely around the Earth's equator. The entire planet circled in Alaskan ice. Think about the machinery, the resources, the energy that would take. Alaska does it naturally every single year, just by existing. The state is a frozen factory operating on a planetary scale. At number 31, we compare Alaska's coastline to an entire continent. Alaska's coastline is longer than the entire perimeter of Africa. You could walk around the second largest continent on Earth and cover less distance than Alaska's shores. Africa has 54 countries, billions of people, diverse ecosystems from deserts to jungles. Alaska is one state with barely any people, and its coastline still beats the entire continent. The numbers are genuinely absurd. Number 30 shows exactly how ridiculous Alaska's size really is. Alaska is 6,300 square miles. You could fit Texas, California, and Montana inside Alaska's borders and still have room left over. 3 of America's biggest states could disappear into Alaska with space to spare. It is not just large. It is incomprehensibly vast, in ways that make other massive places look tiny. At number 29, we enter Alaska's forests. The Tongass National Forest is the largest national forest in the United States, covering more area than the entire state of West Virginia. One forest bigger than an entire state. West Virginia has mountains, cities, rivers, and millions of people. Tongass is just trees, wildlife, and silence. Alaska's forests operate on scales that make other protected lands look like small parks. Number 28 reveals that Alaska's mountains are still being built right now. The Pacific Plate is diving under Alaska at 2.4 inches per year, literally constructing new mountains in real time as tectonic forces collide. Every year, Alaska gets taller. The ground is rising, peaks are growing, and the landscape is transforming. You are not looking at a finished product. You are watching a planet actively building one of its greatest features. At number 27, Alaska claims the wilderness crown completely. Alaska has more designated wilderness area than all other states combined. We are talking about 57.8 million acres of protected, untouched land. Every other state in America pooled together cannot match Alaska's wilderness. The state stands alone as the keeper of the last truly wild places in the nation, and it is not even close. Number 26 brings us to Alaska's volcanic fury. Alaska has 54 volcanoes that have erupted in the last 300 years. That is more active volcanoes than any other state, and most of them are still ready to blow. While other states have dormant volcanic relics, Alaska has an active volcanic field that could erupt at any moment. The entire state sits on top of a geological powder keg that never stops threatening to explode. At number 25, the Alaska Range proves it is not done growing. The entire mountain range is still rising at 1 millimeter per year due to ongoing tectonic collision. Slow, steady, unstoppable growth. That might sound small, but over thousands of years, millimeters become meters, and meters become entirely new peaks. Alaska's mountains are not ancient history. They are a work in progress that will not stop. Number 24 shows why Alaska shakes more than anywhere else in America. Alaska experiences 11% of all earthquakes on Earth. One state, 11% of the planet's seismic activity. The ground in Alaska is constantly moving, shifting, settling. Living there means accepting that the earth beneath your feet is never truly stable. It is a land in perpetual motion. At number 23, we find a view that should not be possible. There are peaks in Alaska where you can see 3 different seas at the same time. The Bering Sea, the Pacific Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean, all visible from one spot. Standing in that location means you are looking at 3 of the world's major bodies of water simultaneously. Alaska is so massive and positioned so perfectly that it touches multiple oceanic systems at once. Number 22 reveals Alaska's dominance over coastal waters. Alaska's territorial waters make up 33% of all U.S. coastal waters. One state controls a third of America's ocean territory. The fishing rights, the shipping lanes, the resources beneath those waves, Alaska commands a third of everything. The state's influence extends far beyond its land borders into vast stretches of ocean. At number 21, we count Alaska's rivers and lakes. The state has over 3,000 rivers and 3 million lakes, covering 14,000 square miles of water. That is an area larger than some entire states. Alaska is not just land and ice. It is a network of waterways, so vast that mapping them all would take lifetimes. The state contains entire aquatic ecosystems that most people will never see. Number 20 introduces the largest protected wilderness on Earth. Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska is 6 times larger than Yellowstone. 6 Yellowstones could fit inside one Alaskan park. Yellowstone is already massive, a legendary park known worldwide. Alaska looked at that and said, "Hold my coffee," then created something 6 times bigger. The scale makes other national parks look like small nature reserves. At number 19, we see just how big Alaska's wildlife refuges are. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is bigger than 10 U.S. states, an entire refuge that could swallow Connecticut, Delaware, and Rhode Island combined. This is not just protected land. This is a territory so vast that entire states could disappear into it. Alaska operates on a scale that makes normal measurements feel completely inadequate. Number 18 brings us to Alaska's bear population. Alaska has more brown bears than all other U.S. states combined. Approximately 30,000 bears roaming the wilderness. The state is bear country in the truest sense. While other states have small pockets of bear habitat, Alaska is essentially one massive bear kingdom. The bears outnumber humans in many regions, and they own the landscape completely. At number 17, Alaska surprises everyone with a tropical twist. The Tongass is the only temperate rainforest in North America, bringing lush, wet, green forests to a state known for ice and snow. Alaska is not just frozen tundra. It has genuine rainforest, dripping with moss, thick with vegetation, and soaked in rain. The state contains ecosystems that contradict everything people think they know about it. Number 16 introduces a lake with its own unique species. Lake Iliamnu is so large and isolated that it has developed its own population of freshwater seals found nowhere else on Earth. These seals evolved in complete isolation, adapting to freshwater life in ways no other seals have. Alaska contains entire species that exist in only one location, proof of how wild and untouched the state remains. At number 15, we watch Alaska's glaciers carve ice into the ocean. Tidewater glaciers in Alaska calve icebergs the size of 10-story buildings every single day, massive chunks of ice crashing into the sea. Each iceberg is a small skyscraper made of ancient ice, breaking free and floating away. This happens daily across Alaska's coast. The state is constantly shedding ice on a scale that most places never see. Number 14 takes us deep underground. Alaska's permafrost layer extends more than 2,000 feet down in some locations. That is frozen ground reaching depths that most buildings never achieve in height. The Earth itself is frozen solid, layer after layer of ice and soil locked in place for thousands of years. Digging in Alaska means hitting permanent ice that has been frozen since before civilization began. At number 13, we measure more coastline insanity. Alaska has more than 6,600 miles of coastline. That is more than Florida, California, and Hawaii combined. 3 of America's most coastal states. The beaches, the bays, the rocky shores. Alaska has more of it than the sun-soaked tourist destinations people flock to. The state is surrounded by water on an almost comical scale. Number 12 shows us a peninsula that refuses to end. The Alaska Peninsula extends 497 miles into the ocean. That is longer than California is wide, an entire landmass jutting into the sea. California stretches from coast to coast in less distance than this one. Alaskan Peninsula reaches into the water. Alaska's geography is stretched and elongated in ways that defy normal proportions. At number 11, Alaska's largest island steps up. Kodiak Island is bigger than Delaware and Rhode Island combined. 2 entire states could fit on one Alaskan island, and there would still be room left. Kodiak is not even Alaska's only big island. It is just the largest. The state has multiple islands that could compete with small states, each one a world unto itself. Number 10 brings us to the Yukon River, stretching 1,980 miles through the wilderness. That river is long enough to reach from New York City all the way to Denver, an entire cross-country journey. The Yukon does not just flow, it carves through Alaska with relentless force, creating waterways that connect vast regions and support ecosystems across impossible distances. It is a liquid highway through frozen lands. At number 9, we confront Alaska's isolation. There are only 12 roads connecting communities across the entire state. Most towns are only accessible by boat or plane, completely cut off from the road network. Imagine living somewhere you cannot drive to. No highway, no shortcuts. Just water or air as your only options. Alaska's communities exist in isolation that most Americans cannot comprehend. Number 8 shows Alaska's rainfall extremes. Some parts of the state receive over 200 inches of rain per year, drowning in water. Other parts get less than 6 inches, practically desert conditions. The same state contains rainforest levels of precipitation and desert levels of dryness. Alaska holds contradictory climates side by side, refusing to pick just one weather pattern. At number 7, we count mountains that do not even get names. Alaska has more than 2,670 named mountains. Most unnamed peaks are not even counted because there are simply too many to track. Thousands of mountains exist in Alaska without names, without recognition, without anyone caring enough to catalog them. The state has more peaks than it knows what to do with. Number 6 introduces the Copper River Delta, hosting the entire world population of dusky Canada geese during their migration. Every single member of this species visits one Alaskan location each year. If this delta disappeared, the species would go extinct. Alaska holds the fate of entire populations in single locations, serving as a critical hub for wildlife that cannot survive anywhere else. At number 5, we meet Alaska's pilots. Alaska has more seaplane pilots per capita than anywhere else on Earth. Flying is not a luxury. It is basic transportation in a state with no roads. People learn to fly planes, like others learn to drive cars. The sky is Alaska's highway system, and seaplanes are the vehicles connecting communities across impossible distances. Number 4 showcases Alaska's biodiversity. The state has over 430 species of wildlife, including species found nowhere else on Earth. Alaska is a biological treasure chest, holding life that exists only there. From unique seals, to rare birds, to isolated populations, Alaska protects species that would vanish if the state disappeared. It is a living museum of evolution and isolation. At number 3, we discover time zone chaos. Alaska is so big it spans 4 different time zones. The state decided that was too complicated, so it officially only uses 2. Alaska is wide enough to have its own time zone problems, stretching across enough longitude to confuse clocks. The state is so large it breaks time itself. Number 2 reveals Alaska's linguistic diversity. Alaska has 34 recognized indigenous languages still actively spoken today. That is more linguistic diversity than most countries can claim. While languages die out globally, Alaska keeps dozens alive. The state is a living record of human culture and communication, preserving ways of speaking that existed for thousands of years. At number 1, we reach the ultimate truth about Alaska. The state has more than 100 million acres that have never been mapped or explored. That is larger than the entire country of Germany. An entire Germany-sized chunk of Alaska remains completely unknown. No maps, no surveys, no footprints, just wilderness that has existed since the beginning of time, untouched, unseen, and waiting. Alaska is not just a state. It is the last great mystery.